Anyway, okay. All right. Well, it's April 4th. We just had a high wind evening last night. My garbage cans were blowed over and stuff. But we're here in Grand Ron on a blustery, rainy day. And I'm here with Dean Rhodes, who, how long have you been working at Smoke Signals again now?
I started in August of 2007, so I'm coming up on 15 years.
Okay. So yeah, yeah.
I'm the longest tenured editor of the paper ever.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, you've been there a while. In fact, that would have been like early in my council career. So
yeah, you were council chairman when I came in August of 2007. Yeah,
that was a long time ago. That was a
yeah.
long time ago. So anyway, like you and I were discussing previously, we are now in the 5 years under which the Smoke Signals has been under the jurisdiction of the Independent Press Ordinance. And since then, you guys have branched out into other forms of media. You now produce podcasts. You now produce videos. And I guess, is there anywhere else you see yourself branching off into?
Well, I think right now with the staff that we have, we're pretty full. We don't have that big a staff. I don't think people realize how small of a staff we actually have. We have 6 people, but as far as people who actually produce content, we have a photographer, we have a staff writer, we have myself, but about half of my time is taken up doing other things besides producing content. And then we have a social media digital journalist. So I think, between podcasts and videos and writing news stories and taking photos, I think we're pretty maxed out at this point. I think about the only thing that we haven't done is maybe go into radio, but that would be maybe something if the tribe ever wanted to do is start a radio station. I don't know if that would be of any efficacy for the local community, but I mean, that's something the tribe could look into at some point, I suppose.
So for the record, it's an idea that I batted around a few years ago. And then when I looked at it, because Warm Springs, of course, has their radio station. And I guess when you talk about content, do you think it would be possible to produce the type of content to sustain a radio station?
I don't know. I think it would. I think it would if you had a combination of news and talk shows and music. I think you would be able to do it at least on. Wouldn't have to be 24 hours, 7 days a week, but I think you could do it.
Okay. Okay. So when you started, obviously, the predominant means that the tribe communicated with Smoke Signals was just through print media. And as you've gone down these alternative methods, how do you think that has changed how you guys approach covering some of your news stories that you do?
Well, I think for me as editor, I just have to remember, I come from a print background, so I have to remember to consider that there might be a podcast option, there might be a video we should do. It's not just thinking about photos and words anymore. You gotta think it with all those things at your disposal. You have to think about how you can use them. Coming up on the 16th, they're going to be honoring Catherine Harrison at the school district. Back in the old days, we'd just go down, take pictures, write a story. Now I'm sending down my videographer. She's going to take video and do a YouTube story about it. And then, you're a fan of the synopsises that we do. We realize that not everybody has time to sit down and read 1,000 or 1,600 word story. So, we give you the nut graph, which is an old phrase of saying basically you can sum up a story in one paragraph. That's what we do. We say, okay, if you don't have time to read the story, bam, this is what the story is about. At least you have that. And I've even heard that you're a big fan of the synopsises and you don't read the paper unless you get interested from the synopsis.
So that's partially true. Yes. And I should probably take myself off of your mailing address because it's true. Like, well, I'm one of those people, I don't check my mail more than once a month anyway, which has actually gotten me in trouble in some other areas. But generally, I watch the videos or I just go online to your website and skim the stories. And I guess every now and then I might pick up the issue and look it through announcements, just some of the stuff that doesn't necessarily make your website. But yeah, videos and just being able to click on the individual story links is mostly how I follow what you guys do.
Yeah, we make a conscious effort not to put everything up on the website. I mean, you don't get to see the ads,
Mhm.
which are a lot of departments advertising their events. The briefs, the things that usually aren't bylined, we don't put up on the website. So, if you just look at the website, you're not seeing the whole paper, but you can download the PDF. There's another way you can get the paper. Like you said, we e-subscriptions now are over, I think, 200.
Oh,
When we
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, when we get the paper done, we email it out. And depending on the publication date, you might get the paper a good 3 to 4 days before anybody else sees it. So that's another way people are getting the paper. So yeah, from when I started in 2007 to now, our outreach has a lot more tentacles to it than just mailing out the paper twice a month and sitting back and doing nothing else. I mean, we're constantly trying to keep the membership informed.
And so how many subscribers do you now have to Smoke Signals?
Well, we got 200 e-subscribers, but we print about 7,500 copies every time. And I think we have 5,500 people that we mail it to. And that's tribal members and non-tribal members. And then the rest are distributed at the casino in Willamina, Sheridan, Summit, Chemeketa Community College. So the rest of those are put out in the mailboxes that people pick up.
And so, and I guess that's one drawback to online work is it's a lot harder to know what your exact readership is, because with subscriptions you have a number you can look at and say, well, we know we're at least reaching this many people, assuming they read it, like, because obviously I'm one that I don't, but so I'm a big fan of the online work, but it's also harder to know, correct me if I'm wrong, who your exact audience is now, isn't it?
No, but the interesting thing is we have Google Analytics. So it's kind
Oh,
of, you can go in and see what stories are most read. And sometimes you get some interesting results. Like this morning, I came in and looked at our analytics, and our most read story over the weekend was a story that we wrote 5 years ago about Heather Cameron going missing in Northern California, which kind of coincides with April being Domestic Violence
yeah.
Month. So somebody must have posted that story and shared it somewhere, and it's kind of gone viral. And it was our most read story over the weekend, which I found kind of interesting. So
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing, right? And you guys did a pretty pretty lengthy podcast on it, as I recall.
yeah, we did back 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So on the podcasting, how do you decide like what sort of story or feature you want to do?
Well, actually, I've kind of taken myself out of that a little
Okay.
bit. We hired Kamiyah Koch, who's a tribal member, and she's the social media digital journalist. And she basically decides whether to do something as a podcast or a YouTube video. Sometimes I have ideas and I pass them along to her, but in developing her news judgment, I think she's kind of got it down now after about 2-3 years of being here. So I really leave that up to her to make that decision, how we handle that. She's also does some writing for the paper. We started a new thing where she goes through YouTube and tries to find interesting indigenous oriented videos, and then she recommends those in every edition of Smoke Signals. And as you probably know, I'm getting ready to retire. 2 years from now, I won't
Yeah.
be here. So I'm really trying to encourage her, as well as Danielle, our current staff writer, to develop more of their own news judgment, because they're going to need it when I'm gone. So I
So
don't know if I answered your question, but back when I was doing podcasts, um, I just tried to find things that were interesting to me. And I've always thought, as an editor, if I'm interested in it, I think other people will be. And if I'm not, then I don't think other people will. It's a very egocentric way to look at it, but that's just news judgment I've developed over the years. And I think I usually made good choices. Like when we analyzed the election results one year, or I interviewed Justin Martin about his baseball career. I thought those things were kind of interesting, and people seemed, at least they'd go on and listen for a while on the podcast.
And so on those videos and podcasts, I've noticed, because I like this, for example, I dabble in this stuff as well. And I've noticed, like on YouTube, it'll indicate that a video has only gotten a certain amount of hits. But it appears to me that if you post some of these videos to Facebook, they might get more hits that don't necessarily register with YouTube. So because sometimes I would get disappointed, think, oh, well, only 12 people listen to that. But then I came to realize that there were definitely more than 12 people that listened and or saw the video. So do you know why that is, by any chance?
I would only guess that YouTube only counts the direct access through their format. So if it gets linked to like Facebook or Twitter, maybe those don't count. That's the only thing I would guess.
Yeah, I haven't figured it out, but anyway, I do enjoy doing these things. So in terms of like your podcasts and videos, you just mentioned one about Heather Cameron Haller. Are there any like particular stories or events that you covered that were surprisingly more popular than you thought they would be?
Well, actually, what turns out to be very popular are when we do photo essays. When we go out and take pictures of the Veterans Royalty Competition, or we have photos at the powwows, we get thousands and thousands of likes on Facebook for those, much more than when we put a link up for a story, which would require you to, read 1,000 words or something to find out what happened in a tribal council meeting. So those kind of events tend to be more popular. Anything to do with youth tends to get a lot of reaction from on the website as well as Facebook.
And
so those kind of things, culture things, but I'd say anything cultural that deals with the tribal youth, you can almost be assured we'll get 1,000 likes on something.
And is because youth are presumed to be the main consumers online, especially by social media?
I think it may be that, but I think it's also that whatever adult followers we have, they like seeing stuff about tribal youth. The tribal youth are a treasure and they're the future of the tribe. So they like seeing positive coverage of them. I'd say that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a couple broad questions, but just for clarity. So how long have you been like a journalist? I should know this. I know how long you've been at Smoke Signals, and I'm sure you've told me the work you did before, but I'm just curious to know, because what I'm going to ask you next is about the trend of journalism and news coverage, just nationally, not just in our tribe, but nationally.
Well, Cliff Notes version, I graduated from Arizona State in December of '82, got my first job that next summer in Payson, Arizona, and I've been working ever since. Actually, 32 years ago today, I was the pop music writer for the Phoenix Gazette, which is a now defunct afternoon newspaper in Phoenix, and I was covering Paul McCartney. I always remember this day because that was a fun day. But I've worked at weekly and daily newspapers in Arizona, in Oregon, North Dakota, Washington State, and then the last 14 years I've been here.
Well, I don't forget that you're from Arizona State, and Arizona State, for whatever it's worth, it always comes up among the top 10 party schools in the country. And I don't know if it was like that when you were there, but I think I read it several weeks ago, and there it was, ASU.
Well, you got to be good at something, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. So I don't have the extensive background. I did go to University of Oregon to get my undergrad in journalism, but I have to think that this has been a very interesting time to be in this profession, because we've really watched the news go from predominantly to like nightly news on, different corporate media, CBS, ABC, CNN, and mostly print, to now it just appeared, I'm not sure what the exact trends are, but it just appears that people get their news from all sorts of different sources, much of it online, and that has made the situation ripe for misinformation and fake news. And I'm not sure what the future of journalism is in this country, much less in Indian country. But one thing I find myself lamenting is how easy it is for people to be misinformed and oftentimes dead wrong about certain news issues. And I'm not sure if you have the same observations or if I'm just overly pessimistic.
Well, no, I think you're right. And I wish I could remember the story offhand, but I know there was a couple years ago where a rumor was running rife over like the holiday season, and we got back into the offices in early January. And I came down and talked to tribal council and got the real facts and wrote a news story. And that kind of immediately cleared up. The story got shared like crazy on Facebook, and it kind of tamped down the rumor that was going on. Again, I can't remember what it was, but I think you're right. I think I don't even subscribe to a daily newspaper anymore. I get most of my news off of TV or the internet. But I do know that some people, and I think Michael Cherry's one of them, who said whenever she hears something going on at the tribe, she goes to smoke signals, because if it's not there, she doesn't necessarily believe it's true. And I appreciate that comment. I think you still have to have a trusted news source.
Mhm.
And the one great thing that this tribe has done, and I think I've always considered it a big ask, is that the tribe has carved us out to be that fourth estate who can come in and write a story and say, no, this is what's really going on. And it can be trusted by the membership, and it's not coming from the tribal government, and it's not influenced by who the administrators are. I mean, we have the ability to say, no, that's true or that's not true, and tell the membership that. And I've always appreciated the fact that this tribe's had the courage to say, okay, we're going to let the paper, we're not independent financially, of course, because we couldn't survive, but we're independent in that we can now write what we think we need to write.
And there's still, you sent me an article last week, I think, that ran in Indian Country Today that talked about this very issue. And surprisingly, there's still not very many tribes that have elected to go down this route.
Not very many. And we get a lot of other tribal newspapers here in the office, and I got to tell you, it is a pretty sad state of affairs out there for a lot of tribes. I think they're basically getting glorified tribal government approved newsletters is what they're getting. They're not very well designed. They're not very well written. And they don't really have what you would call news in them. I mean, it's just basically press releases from their tribal government.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So I think one of the issues, it's not just smoke signals and tribal newspapers, but it's just in general, people want news every day, right? And a twice a month publication, some would argue, doesn't quite cover the news quickly enough for people who are just diehard about getting up-to-date information on whatever is going on in the tribe. And so is that something that you think can be alleviated as smoke signals starts turning to other media like videos, like podcasts, and who knows, maybe one day, maybe that can be like an end goal for you before you ride off into the sunset, is an actual radio show, if not a radio station, but some sort of radio show that could provide daily or just several times a week updates on what's going on in the tribe and the community and the tribal government.
Well, I think we already do that in a way. We've got, I think, 2,500 Facebook friends.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps growing marginally every day. But, I wrote a story about yesterday's general council meeting, and instead of waiting until April 15th to publish that story in the newspaper, we put it up on our website, and then we linked it to our Facebook page. So if somebody wasn't able to sit in on the 90-minute session yesterday, they can read my story and find out what happened. So I find all the internet stuff to be a complement to the printed page, but we have definitely in the time I've been here, changed our focus from printing in the paper first to putting up on the internet first and then printing it in the newspaper. By the time a lot of stories come out in the paper, I'm like, God, we haven't printed that yet? Because we put it up on, we wrote it 2 weeks ago and it's been up on the internet and Facebook and people have had a chance to see it. So I think if people really want to know what's going on with the tribe, they shouldn't wait for the paper. They should check on Facebook and check our website, which is smokesignals.org, on a daily basis, because we try and put something new up every day. We can't do it every day because sometimes nothing happens, but most of the time we put something up every day.
So I don't get onto Facebook like I used to. I've kind of backed away from social media, mainly because I just found it consuming too much of my time. And then when you have all these different groups that you follow, it becomes almost impossible to follow everything, because on some levels in the tribal community, we do have people who do their own reporting or their own interpretation of things. And I have just found that there's groups, social media groups, and when we say social media, we mean Facebook, but there's like Facebook groups that I'm not even a part of. So I can't follow like what's going on in the minds of the membership there. But for as much as like someone like me that is hesitant to use social media, I kind of feel like it's still one of the better ways to get news out there, because we still every now and then hear from a tribal member, usually a tribal elder, who considers themselves old school and just wants to get everything in print. But you lose timeliness if you rely upon print media.
Right. Well, and I think the difference between maybe those sites and Smoke Signals, our Facebook page and our website is, our ultimate goal is to be a trusted news source. We go by journalistic ethics. We try to ensure that everything we print is true. So I think the difference there is, there's all these websites maybe having to do with the tribe where people are just expressing their opinions. But I think when you see something up on our Facebook page or you go to smokesignals.org, what you read is true. We print very few corrections. Unlike back 5 years ago, people were worried we're going to go rogue. And I always used to say if we went rogue, it would be Rogue River.
Yeah.
And people were worried we were going to get sued for millions of dollars, which we haven't done, because, we have a certain professional ethics that we have to go by to be journalists. People think that anybody can just be a journalist or be a photographer, but we can't. We have ethics and we have guidelines, and we've been trained to do what we're doing, just like a lot of other people have been trained to be a wildlife biologist or a doctor. So I think the difference between those two things is what are you accessing and who's providing you information? Is it a professional news organization, or is it just somebody who started a website and wants to give you their opinion on something?
Well, and I think you guys have oftentimes, and actually this predates you. I mean, as long as I can remember, some people have always been critical of Smoke Signals when they feature certain council members regularly in news stories or in photo ops. And I can't remember if it was you or someone before you who just said, we can only cover the council members that show up.
I think I've said that a few times too.
Okay.
It's very hard to take a photograph of somebody who's not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some, I'm not talking about the current council, but previous councils. There were some people who showed up a lot and other people who were rarely at events. And you really can't take a photo or get a quote from somebody who's not there. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And so how many awards are you guys up for at NAJA this year, or has that been announced yet?
We submitted 14 things to NAJA and 14 to OMPA. Over my tenure, we've won 111 awards between those two contests. Previous to me, the paper had won 37. So I was shooting for 100. So I think, I've gotten to where I want to be. Everything else is gravy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we consistently do pretty well. Last year, I think we were the 4th best newspaper in our category in Indian country.
Well, that's pretty
And
good.
that's always the important one for me is general excellence. We've won general excellence a few times, but I always like to be in the top 3 for that, because that's just other journalists looking at the entire newspaper and saying, oh, this is a darn good newspaper.
But no Pulitzers though yet, huh?
No, we haven't done any Pulitzers yet. I think if that might be a little bit out of our reach, I think.
And so if you don't mind my asking, who are some of like the competitor papers that regularly win awards?
Well, of course you have the Navajo Times.
Okay.
They're a very good newspaper. The Cherokee Phoenix,
Yeah, yeah.
the Muskogee paper, which also has a free press ordinance now. They're very good.
Again, they brought that back.
Yeah, they ended up getting that put in their constitution. Yeah.
Oh, well, good for them.
Yeah, they put it up for a vote, and the membership endorsed it. So those are usually the really big newspapers that we have to compete against. Oh, and the other one is the one out at the Umatilla tribe in Pendleton. They
Yeah.
always do very well too. They have a very good paper.
The Confederated Umatilla Journal, right?
Yeah, and they just got a new editor because their longtime editor retired as well. So.
And those other papers, interestingly, they come from massive tribes, right?
Oh yeah, look at the Navajo Times. There's
Yeah.
250,000 members, and they have a gigantic reservation that touches 3 or 4 pretty large cities in Arizona and New Mexico. So they are totally separate from their tribal government because they can survive on ad revenue, whereas we can't. I mean, if we make 10,000 or 15,000 a year in ad revenue, we're pretty lucky. But that'll print maybe 3 editions of the paper, and then we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without tribal government support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Yeah. Well, you guys are obviously doing a good job, and you're being recognized for that by your peers in the industry. So,
and thank you for helping get the independent tribal press ordinance through. I think I've said this many times, but it made a big difference in the ability of this newspaper to actually print news. So.
well, and it's in our Constitution, but I'd be curious to know how the wording in our Constitution compares with the other tribe that you mentioned previously. But that's the legal geek in me thinking out loud there.
I think it's just pretty much a generic freedom of press, freedom of assembly, and it's not codified. And that's the big thing. I think when you codify it, then it has a little bit more specific teeth to it than just being able to say, well, the Constitution says we have freedom of press. Well, what does that mean? To a lot of people, it could mean totally different things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you don't necessarily have the separation with, as you've stated, between tribal newspapers and the tribal government, not like you have in the United States, where newspapers are able to like make their own revenue by selling subscriptions and ads and stuff. And for small tribal newspapers, that's just very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not self-sustaining. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything you wanted to ask me? Because I've just been asking you stuff.
Not really. How long are you going to stay on tribal council?
I can honestly say I
got a law degree to work.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we'll run out of time before I answer both those questions in depth. I'll just say that like the law degree does help me in my job here. I kind of wish I'd gone back to school sooner. I think there were things that I thought I understood previously that I probably didn't understand as well. So I'm still, while I'm not a practicing attorney, I don't regret going back to school and studying the law, even though at times it was really grueling, and I am probably still dealing with some of the residue of burnout from completing my studies a couple of years ago. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. The only thing I would say, and I said this, I got interviewed by the Pew Research Center a couple of weeks ago for a study they did, but I always like to point out that what this tribe did was a very big ask for a government to carve out an entity and say, okay, we're going to take you out of the government structure and let you be a watchdog on us, and we're going to fund you. God, that's just a big ask, and that's something that tribal members here should just be very proud of. And Grand Run tribal members are very fortunate in a lot of ways, but that's another way that they're very fortunate. They finally had a tribal council that said, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that. And I've always felt very fortunate to work for this tribe, especially after that occurred.
Well, and
I think people can trust what they see in the newspaper. And I think 50 years from now, when your ancestors are looking at smoke signals, trying to find out why something happened, what they see, they'll be able to believe is what happened.
well, and I think it was just the right decision to do. And every now and then you still get the criticisms of, well, if they're receiving tribal dollars, then the tribe, specifically the tribal council, should have some sort of oversight. And my response is always, you could say the same thing about tribal police. Should we go tell the police who they should and shouldn't arrest? I mean, it's no, certain entities in your government, you have to kind of let them do their job and use their own judgment in doing that job. And I think the tribal press is one of those.
Right. Well, you won't get a disagreement from me.
Yeah, I would hope not. It would be really weird if you did, but so anyway, well, we're going to probably start getting the notice that my cheap Zoom free account is gonna run out of time soon. But I do want to thank you for showing up here and for doing the Zoom with me.
Thank you for inviting me. And if any tribal members out there see this, and if they see something in the paper they like or don't like, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm the first contact, and I work for an editorial board that currently is all tribal members. They meet once a month, and we hash out things if we need to. And I mean, we are answerable to, if we do something you like or don't like, give me a call. We can talk it over.
There you go. That's the best way to handle it.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Dean.
All right, Chris, take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye.